Hey, Michael, Mark and I are sitting here recording the Go My Favorite Sports Team podcast, and Wink Wink Nod Nod came up. Do you remember Wink Wink Nod Nod from middle school when we played Foursquare?
Don't give any more details.
That's all that it is.
Just need to know what that word means to you.
Yeah, what does Wink Wink Nod Nod mean to you?
Yeah, and why did Wink Wink Nod Nod happen? Why do I remember Wink Wink Nod Nod?
Yeah,
why?
Why do we both remember Wink Wink Nod Nod? Anyway, you should get back to us and let us know.
No, yeah, if you want to. Should, could, would. How are you? Good to hear from you. Been a while. COVID, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Tyler. I think I got an answer for that wink, wink, nod, nod thing that you were referring to. So back when we were playing Foursquare, there was a group of us, and we did the wink, wink, nod, nod thing whenever someone came around that we didn't really want to play with. So we would just look at each other and do the wink, wink, nod, nod, and then we would team up to absolutely destroy whichever person had just gotten into the Foursquare game. Looking back on it, it was really embarrassing. I'm pretty sure we even had a group of us and we called ourselves the Originals because we were that cool back in, 5th grade. It's really not the kind of thing that you want to look back on fondly, and I'm really hoping that I'm misremembering it because it paints me in kind of a negative light. But I'm pretty sure we probably did it to you guys, and if that's the case, sorry. But I guess it can't be too bad if you're still fielding this call. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Bye.
Welcome to Go, my favorite sports team. You heard it here first. Michael Thaxton was a bully, a tyrant of the Foursquare, and his name shall be forever marred by his dirty deeds in middle school.
Yet somehow I Somehow I triumphantly made it to the serving square despite Wink Wink Nod Nod existing.
Yeah, and you triumphantly. I'm going to laugh when actually you were part of the Originals and maybe there's this horrible drama where you were ousted.
I definitely was not, because I remember joining that after the fact, because in middle school, I originally started playing in the gravelly area with the monkey bars and stuff.
Yeah.
And then eventually made my way around to basketball, and then I got kind of tired of basketball and went to Foursquare, and I stuck with Foursquare because of the guys that were there.
Right, of course, definitely. That makes total sense. Welcome to Go My Favorite Sports Team, the #1 sports podcast in America. Hopeful.
We're hopeful.
Eventually, we will be there with your support and our incredible knowledge of sports. When I reach 100% sport knowledge, then we will be the #1 sports podcast in America.
100%.
Yeah, that happens, right? That happens.
We're just going to continually fill your brain. It's the liquid of sport. Gatorade is being poured directly on your brain.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you're new to the podcast and you don't know what that voicemail was in reference to, we will be continuing that story in another episode in the future. But for now, we have something else. And Tyler here, if you didn't know, is a master of sport.
Yes. Some call me the king of putting balls in holes.
The king of balls in holes himself. Tyler the ball hole shide.
The ball.
The ball hole shide.
No, but I got a master's degree in sport administration back in 2012 and have studied sport, played countless sports in my life, and just enjoyed it. So I've studied
Or
it.
does he? Wait, I can't hear these. We'll play some dramatic, scary music.
That's why we need the headphones.
Yeah, that's why we need that. But they're just uncomfortable. Eventually, when we have other things here and more soundboardy stuff, we'll do that. But when we get our live streaming set up, then we'll get back into it because we'll be playing highlights.
When the studio is officially finished.
Yes, we are building a studio to really bring you Go, my favorite sports team, in broad HD. 720p, 30 FPS coming at you through the live streams, the internet's, straight to your homes.
Eventually, we're going to have a live podcast where we're just playing dodgeball with each other, trying to dodge at our desk.
That'd be pretty cool.
The mics.
I'd like that. But I question, I'm no longer me. In case you knew this. I'm no longer Markiplier.
You're going to accost me with the ghosts of the
I have been
subreddit.
accosted by the ghosts, and they are about to accost you, and we're starting off with a banger. I am now the ghost of Femme Fatale. Tyler's knowledge base is based on administration rather than the sport itself. I feel like his sport level knowledge is more on a fan level rather than a professional level. What say you, sir?
I say simply this. Yes, my degree is focused on administration and business, but that is not entirely my focus throughout my entire degrees. I have an undergraduate degree, which I minored in coaching, which is based in sport management, which focuses less entirely on administration and more on sport as a whole. We get into facilities, we get into the rules, we get into officiating. I also worked at the city's rec center and was an official for multiple sports. I coached multiple sports. I coached water polo. I've coached baseball to some degree. I've worked with a bunch of different people in a massive amount of sports fields. I also focused a lot of times on anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, and understanding motor skills and various other aspects that revolve around fitness and sport. And I played sport my entire life. You can't discount the fact that I played sport even into grad school. I played 3 sports in college. I was a swimmer, I was a water polo player, and I played football. Yes, those are only 3 sports, but I've also been on the track throughout my entire life playing all different sports across the board, whether it's soccer, wrestling, baseball, lacrosse. I did hacky sack stuff. Like I've played chess. Like you can't discount the fundamental knowledge that I have that isn't just based around my degree, because the degree also has parts within it where I have electives where I can study the rules and moral and ethical reasoning in sport.
And femme fatale is now dead and buried. Wow. But however, another person followed up with another question. If Tyler understands sports so well, why doesn't he have any game?
I won a state championship in water polo.
No, game.
Oh.
With the ladies.
Oh, All right. You know what? Being an athlete doesn't mean you necessarily get the ladies. I focused on school. I focused on sport. I focused on my career. And the way that I work emotionally is very distinct from other people. And I don't have to get into it personally on this podcast, but I will. When I date somebody, I give 100%. And I don't feel like I'm ready to date somebody else until I feel like the last person is no longer an issue. It's a non-issue.
Okay.
Because I want to be able to give that person all of the attention that they deserve.
My God, did you just hear that? Tyler just spit the hardest game. I don't know how why you say that. I don't know. I clearly have no game, but Tyler, he wants to give you the tender, romantic loving, the care and attention that you deserve. I guarantee you, they're clamoring for you right now. You won that argument, and Jim Moriarty, H1, is now dead and buried in the ground. May their ghost forever rest in peace. All right, we have multiple things about how saying marching band is a sport from various different people. Did we ever say it wasn't a sport?
We never said it wasn't a sport.
But we didn't declare it as a sport.
Correct. We haven't done a marching band primer, which perhaps you could lead us on.
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'd rather purge those memories from existence if we're all going to be perfectly honest about things here. I acknowledge it might be a sport. I didn't feel like an athlete when I was doing it, but that doesn't mean it didn't have a competitive side to it. I wouldn't say that was the main focus of it, however.
No, it was performance.
But and I would say at a collegiate level, definitely, they're much more athletic, much more involved, much more disciplined. I'd say that high school level is not a sport. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like when I was part of it, I'd look at all the football players playing over there. Oh, look at them. But then again, I threw. So what do I know? I'm the not sport knower, but I'm actually the one with experience in marching band. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. I don't know about that one. Anyway, we have many, many, many more takes. Here we go. Sports are for people who have no life.
What? Do you realize that the state of play for everybody, get rid of computers. Act like computers don't exist, all right? The state of play for humankind is literally ingrained in our bodies. It's in our nature to be physically active. And it's unfortunate that we've become a society that is not as physically active as we used to be. And sports are our way to have fun with physical activity, to where physical activity isn't a chore. So having a life, sport literally gives life. The reason I know Mark and have the friendship we have is because of sport. The reason I have numerous friends that I have, whether it be Thaxton, who we just had on the phone earlier. Well, not really on the phone. He left me a voicemail. But the majority of the friends that I have been and come from sports participation. So if anything, sports give you the opportunity to have a social life, to have that group. Not to say that other opportunities aren't there, but it is ingrained in human nature, and the amount of bonding that occurs with communication and team sports in particular gives you a social life.
Boom, destroyed, roasted, annihilated, gone from this earth. If talk about not having a life, you're dead. But also you have a point, because who can say what is like something for someone with no life or not when no one knows the meaning of life? Because the meaning of life is whatever you make of it. It doesn't really matter. You just pick one and you go with it.
Yeah, it's like trying to say, oh, you're a sports athlete, you're not cool. It's like, it's the same thing that, the stupid sports athletes in high school are. It's like, oh, you're not an athlete, you're not cool. It's like, that's stupid. That's just judgmental, opinion-based bias just because you want to feel superior to somebody else.
Tell them like it is.
And you're not. The people that are doing that are below you because they need to put you down to make themselves feel better. So obviously their life sucks.
God damn, we are getting spicy today. All right. Trust Me, Go With It has a closer for you. Tyler, if you could completely end or ban one sport, what would it be and why?
Oh, God.
What would it be, Tyler?
Completely end or ban one sport.
Let's say you're just going to... People aren't going to magically forget about it, but you are in control of banning it forever and preventing anyone from ever enjoying this sport again.
This is just putting me on the spot to get attacked by numerous
That's
people.
what all these are.
All right. So for me, the one that I would probably get rid of that comes to mind at the top of my head is cheerleading.
Ooh, interesting. Why?
Because, and this is in school, not because competitive cheerleading, I feel, should not be called cheerleading. It should have its own category.
Okay.
For the record. Because cheerleading to me, while designated as a sport in high school, oftentimes isn't the actual sport itself of cheerleading. Which is what competitive cheerleading is. But majority of it is the fact that there's a few negatives to it. For one, I got bullied by a lot of the cheerleaders in high school. Wow. So there's a personal issue there. But there's also this, I've read a lot up on this and met a number of people who were like wanting to be cheerleaders and stuff like that because it was cool. And it just seems like it has that toxic level of like image and idolization and stuff like that. Like you see it in movies all the time. You see it all across the board where it becomes a body image issue. It becomes a popularity issue. It becomes a, for me in particular, bullying issue when it comes to going through puberty and going through those urges. And so I honestly don't think, first of all, I don't think cheerleading in that regard is really a sport. So I think it should be eliminated.
Wow. That is a bold claim, and I appreciate your bravery in making such a bold claim. The crowd is coming.
Yes.
They are charging right now. You can hear their pom-poms a-quivering.
Listen, I've already gotten an email of a professional like cheerleader who did competitive cheerleading being like, I will happily come on and talk about cheerleading and hype it up and all this stuff. And I'm like...
It does seem, I will say this, and again, I don't know really. I have no experience in cheerleading other than I know that they exist. But I will say that it seems like a lot of your reasoning for banning it is less about the physicality of it or like the sport basis of it. It's more about the interpersonal relationships that spill over into the rest of, let's say, high school, which would
it's like the culture of it.
The culture of it. Yeah, okay. I could get that. And in a weird way, like in the professional levels, I would guess that professional cheerleading, quote unquote, in terms of outside of like sport events where they're actually cheering, it's more just another facet of gymnastics. Right?
Well, yeah, to me, competitive cheerleading really should be what team gymnastics is. And we can get into this later, but it's because they're actually like throwing each other, catching each other, stacking on each other, doing intricate tricks, close proximity to each other. Like they're doing gymnastic skills very close together and in collaboration that make it more difficult. Which is why I don't think competitive cheerleading should be called cheerleading, because the designation and understanding of what cheerleading is, yeah, I'm leading a cheer, woo, like hype the crowd thing. So I don't really like
Yeah, I
why
could
it's
see
called
that. I mean, whenever it gets into the technical definitions of wording, I am always like, the typical usage changes over time and people know things as different things. So if they want to call it cheerleading, it's just a name at that point, right?
But to me, it fits more to team gymnastics because team gymnastics, as we know it, is individuals getting points to collectively contribute to a team goal. Like, they're individually competing. Whereas this is they're actually doing the tricks at the same time and stacking on each other and throwing each other. That equates more to me like teamwork, like what we talked about in the teamwork episode.
I have heard, and this is getting out of this the roasting whatever corner. We don't have a name for the segment, but it's like this is a fun way to get audience interaction. But I have heard stories of like professional cheerleaders who are attached to team being horrifically underpaid, to being like overworked, to being underutilized, underappreciated, and they're just literally it's a sexualization thing, right? It's literally they want women and men. You know, there are multiple different types of cheerleaders. Different people would be a part of it, but it's predominantly for quote unquote eye candy, right? To get the crowd excited.
It depends on what you're...
like random sex scenes in movies in the early 90s, and like it's kind of faded out a lot. Not that there's not sex scenes, but I feel like at a certain part, movies just started being like full on porn in the middle of a movie, and it's like this seems unnecessary. I'm not saying that that's what cheerleading is, but it's just like it's kind of like it's just a shiny object at that point, you know?
Well, it depends on what you designate as professional cheerleaders, because the way I was thinking of it was professional competitive cheerleaders, which is part of clubs.
Outside of like a football game.
Right, whereas like the NFL or NBA or stuff like that, they're really more dancers than they are cheerleaders.
Right.
And that there's actually been a lot of issues that have occurred around cheerleading in those sports.
Yeah.
That they had to make it more about dancing ability and not physical appearance because there was issues with them choosing people based on physical appearance.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it becomes a quagmire, it becomes ripe for abuse. I'm not saying that cheerleading is not a sport because of that, or we're not saying cheerleading is not a sport at all. It's just like if Tyler could ban one, that is apparently the one that would be. And he skipped right over baby bowling, and he went straight for cheerleading. You know, he doesn't know the terror that is baby bowling.
I mean, this almost leads in like this could be the cheerleading episode.
I mean, is it? I don't know.
Do you want to switch?
Sure.
I had an idea for what this was going to be, but now I'm like, my brain is wrapped around the whole cheerleading
Are you
concept.
ready for a cheerleading primer?
I could dive into it to a degree that from an outsider looking in makes sense.
Okay.
But I understand enough about competitive cheerleading where I could talk about it.
I mean, a primer is literally just a base understanding.
Yeah.
So people, like, you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the rules or the scoring, or I don't think. It's just like understanding what it is. Because anyone who's gone through the American school system probably has an understanding of what a cheerleader is, but it's distorted from what cheerleaders actually do, especially on the professional level, I imagine. Because my experience with cheerleaders is just like in high school, every once in a while, these girls would be dressed up as cheerleaders in class, and I'm like, why are you in your cheerleading outfit here? And it's like, oh, we have a game at the end of the day. I was like, don't you have a locker room that you could change it to? It never made sense to me why that happened.
So let's jump into cheerleading.
All
Why
right.
not?
Welcome to the cheerleading primer. You asked for this. This is the last talk that is allowed of cheerleading before Tyler wipes it from the face of the earth, and then all cheerleaders will be expunged from existence simultaneously. So you better confess your cheerleading sins and what's it called when you renounce your cheerleading ways, burn your trophies, burn your pom-pom.
cheerleading gods.
Your cheerleading gods. Your heretical cheerleading gods.
Quit worshiping those pom-pom lords.
No, no more backflips for you.
All right. So before we get into the cheerleading primer, I actually want, because I have a grasp of it because I grew up next to a cheerleader who did gymnastics, who did competitive cheerleading and stuff like that throughout the younger years.
You see a lot of goat sacrifices in the basement.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
the amount of demon summoning,
look, those
rituals.
Those uniforms weren't red for no reason, you know, to hide the blood.
Dude. Yeah. All right. So, Mark.
Yes.
Act 1.
All right.
The image of a cheerleader.
Okay.
What do you picture?
Short skirt, pom-poms, red and white, because I think that was our high school colors. Yep. Pigtails, traditionally girl.
There were male cheerleaders, but yes.
In our high school, were there?
Not when we were there. A few years before us, I actually know we had like one male cheerleader. He was in my scout troop.
Uh-huh.
That's why I know him.
Yeah. You standing on shoulders, going one arm up, knee out. Hey, yo! Woo!
Okay.
Let's go, team. Whoa!
What did they do?
Backflips,
Okay.
splits,
Okay.
jumping,
Okay.
going woo.
They led cheers, right? They hyped up the crowd.
Right.
They got them interested. Like,
Yeah.
remember pep rallies that usually had like signs and stuff?
Right, yeah, they glossed over it. Listen, I was in
What did they do? Woo!
I mean, yeah, that's what it was. I was in the pep band, okay? So during football games, I would play when we scored, which means that in Milford, I never played. So I was really, if I had a phone at that time, smartphones were a thing. I just didn't have one. I was just like twiddling my thumbs.
I feel like the first iPhone came out like when we were seniors.
Yeah, it was 2007 when the first one, but there was still like smart quote unquote phones. Like the BlackBerry, I think, was out before that. And my earliest phone had like 2G connectivity. I could check a weather map. It took like a minute to check a weather map. Anyway, cheerleading, right? So leading cheers. Is there an alpha cheerleader, like the leader
The
of
cheerleading
the leaders?
captain, like in all the movies? I'm pretty sure there's
I've
like
never
one
watched
person.
a cheerleading movie.
I didn't watch a cheerleading movie. It's in the stupid high school movies. You know, the stereotypical like high school.
Remember the
movies,
Giants.
Teen coming of age. Remember the Giants is a very young sports movie.
No, I thought
there were
it was
cheerleaders in
Wait,
that.
no, I thought Remember the Giants is when didn't that in the end the guy got in a car?
Oh, no,
accident?
that was Little Giants. It's Remember the Titans you're thinking
Remember
of.
the Titans. Got it. Okay.
Remember the Giants.
Remember
Is that
the
a thing? Now I'm looking up Remember the Giants.
Anyway, I really didn't watch that many those types of movies.
There's no Remember the Giants film, but there's a Facing the Giants film that's a sport drama movie, but that came out in 2006.
Okay, well that wasn't it. I can tell you that. Anyway, I was in the pep band board, so I was actually very far away from the stands. We were at the end of the field, and just like alone with the scuzz. Oh, you band people go out there, have some fun.
Okay. The pep band wasn't next to the cheerleaders at all, were they?
I had come across a cheerleader in my life. Yes, I had been within
No, but
proximity.
I'm talking about the arrangement at the
Yeah,
stadium.
no, we were on the ends, past the end zone, so we
Okay.
were way over there, where none of the observers were.
Okay, so you weren't in the student section that was in the one end, so
Yeah,
you were
no,
on the
no, I
other
wasn't
side.
there.
Got it. Okay, so you've kind of described what they do. They occasionally do like back handsprings.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be held up usually when they're up in the air doing the leg thing. They're not
Yeah.
standing on shoulders. They're standing on somebody's hands.
Ah, okay.
That's usually what ends up happening. Like you have two support people holding them up and they're standing on their hands.
Oh,
and
I
doing the
remember
trick.
something.
Okay.
I remembered in 8th grade, one of the cheerleaders, it was like a class, I don't know why, but it was like, teach class how to do something. And one of them was a cheerleader, and they said, this is how you do a back handspring. And I took that to heart, and I learned how to do a back handspring from that.
Really?
Yeah, and I actually was able to do a back handspring, and I was like, oh, look at me. And that's when I was much more flexible and much more athletic. Like, you remember I could put my legs behind my head.
Yeah.
Like, that's how flexible I was at that time. And then puberty hit, and like my muscles just stiffened up. I mean, I probably was also stretching and, more active than I am now. But I'm getting there again. But yeah, I remember, that was a cheerleader. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So a lot of times they'll do back handsprings, and they usually have some sort of cheer routine that they get people going, like "Let's go Eagles" for our high school because we were the Eagles.
That's the saddest cheer I've ever
Yeah,
heard.
but they usually had more intricate cheers. I don't remember their cheers, but
If you know sports so well, if you're doing a cheerleading primer, give me the top 5 cheers.
defense. Here we go, Eagles. Here we go.
Those 2. All right, cool.
No, the "Let's go Eagles, let's go" was 3. That's 3.
Are those 2 different cheers? They sounded like the same cheer. to me.
Defense, and then it's "Here we go, Eagles. Here we go."
I remember the
difference.
UC Bear. UC. I remember that.
Yeah.
That was 4. Okay, what's the top 5 most popular cheer of all time?
Top 5 most.
I see London. I see France. I see the quarterback's underpants. And then he gets embarrassed. And then he cries.
Fight. Oh, it was like the fight song. What was the Eagles fight song? Our high school fight song.
I don't remember.
I don't
Why would
remember
I
that
ever
either.
remember?
RESPECT.
Yeah, that was it. That was the one. All right, he did it, everybody. His master's degree has been assured. All right, so
we've painted a picture of what a cheerleader does or is based on your knowledge.
Sure.
So Act 2.
Okay.
So there are two types of cheer that people focus on. Competitive cheer and like high school cheerleading.
Okay.
And they're two different sections because competitive cheer generally involves a much larger team, whereas high school cheer is usually, for our high school, I think we had like maybe 10 cheerleaders. Competitive cheer is co-ed. You're going to have male cheerleaders and female cheerleaders.
Okay.
The male cheerleaders tend to be just as athletic as the female cheerleaders, but they tend to be the bottoms on like the pyramid. So when they lift people up or throw people, they're the ones that are catching and throwing.
Because they're stronger.
Yes.
Ideally. Not that
Stronger,
that couldn't be a woman. Is just like they're typically more strong.
Yes. So the one that I'm focusing on, and this is the biggest thing, is like all-star cheer versus school cheer is what it's called. I'm going to flowcheer.com to be into this. But usually what ends up happening, you remember at pep rallies, the cheerleaders would do a routine with mats down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they would be doing a lot of the back handsprings and coordination to the music and everything along those lines.
Right.
That's more competitive cheer. Whereas cheerleading, as we think about it, is at games. So high school cheer is focused around, support the team, leading the crowd in cheers and being there at games. And usually you see them at football games and basketball games, and that's about it.
Okay.
Cheerleaders usually don't exist with baseball.
They don't exist.
They're just not in that season.
They're gone from existence, purged from reality.
Yeah, cheerleading is mostly focused on it as a fall and winter sport in high school.
Right. In wrestling, they're not
Pinettes.
What?
They kept track of stats for us.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think at this point in my life, I was so terrified to talk to a girl that I never actually understood why they were there. Or I really, truly did not know. And it made no sense to me because it was like, because I don't think they're there in junior high, but then in high school, all of a sudden, all these girls were there and I'm like, why are they here in the boys' room?
We're in all these tight spandex.
No! No, I never asked that. I never in my life have asked what that was about.
Yeah, so the Pinettes, they usually ran the clock for us. They kept track of stats. They paid attention to what happened in the matches and wrote stuff down.
That's very nice of them.
Yeah.
Why didn't the coaches do that?
Because the coaches were busy yelling at us.
Oasis! Oasis! You actually know what Oasis is. Was that the code that he used for you too? What was the coach who did that? I forget what his name was.
Was it Pete? No.
I don't remember names at all.
Oh, was it high school or junior high?
High school.
Okay.
Maybe junior high as well.
What is his name? It starts with a C. Crap. I'm blanking on their names.
His name's Crap.
His name's Crap.
No, yeah, but to remind everyone, for Oasis is like literally when we were wrestling. Coachella is a festival.
No, I think his name was Coach Coachella.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, Coach Coachella.
Coach Coachella. Everywhere he went was a party. And he when we were wrestling, and if we got close to the edge of the ring, in wrestling there's a ring, we'll do a wrestling climber at some point. But at the edge of the circle, once you go out of it, you have to stand back up and reset to the center. So if I'm like in trouble near the edge, he'd go, Oasis! Oasis! And meanwhile, I've got like 160 pounds of sweaty guy all over me. I can't really focus on listening for Oasis when I'm trying to neck bridge for my life. I was very good at neck bridging. That was my one good move.
Your flexibility of the bridge was ridiculous.
Yeah, legitimately, that was my one point of pride is my neck was very strong. Everyone knows my neck is very thick. It's like in high school it is even thicker. And I was just able to lift my entire body and someone else's body just with my neck to prevent my shoulders from getting pinned. That's one of the reasons I tired people out, and that's how I was able to get back on top and win matches is just because I was able to tire them out because I was neck bridging. Then some people were like, nah.
It's honestly why both of our necks are really thick as wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling necks are thick, but yeah, that's where Oasis came from. Coach Coachella.
I think it's Coachello.
Coach Coachello. Sorry.
I this is just going way back, trying to pull because we had Coach Pete. Mm-hmm. And I don't know his last name because he always wanted us to call him Coach Pete.
Right.
And then we had, my mind's blanking, but I'll remember it later. All the different coaches we had for wrestling. But
that's okay. This is cheerleading.
Yes.
Back to the cheerleading.
All right. So competitive cheer is generally a bigger team.
Mm-hmm.
High school cheer tends to be smaller. Now, not to say that high school didn't do anything similar to competitive cheer like we saw at pep rallies when they actually put on a performance to music,
Sure.
but that's what they do in competitive cheer. That is everything that they do is this group routine where they like use choreography to music. It's basically very similar to floor routine in gymnastics, but it's multiple people doing things at once.
Okay.
Usually they'll have like two people going across doing tricks. They'll have throws going on in the background where people are launching in the air doing tricks and spins and flips. They'll have people dancing at the same time. Like everything is interworking. It's almost like a complete dance performance. But they're doing throws and stacks and gymnastic routines like back handsprings over into a pike or a twist. I don't remember the names of the moves.
It's like Cirque du Soleil.
Yes.
In a weird way, it is. It does sound a lot, because I know in Cirque du Soleil they do that. The throwing people up. Do you think that like many people from competitive cheer go into the circus?
It would not surprise me. It would not surprise me.
You heard it here first. Cheerleaders are circus people. That's where they come from. They float into town and a dark mist descends, and then you hear ba, 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 na, ba, 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 and then the cheerleaders metamorphosize into clowns. Why do you think their outfits are white and red? It's clowns. It's clowns.
Now I know why I don't like clowns. I was bullied by cheerleaders in high school.
No! What did they bully you about?
Just, I had a crush on one of them.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I was a football player, and I wasn't a popular football player because I was also a nerd. Because I did well in school, so I wasn't cool enough to be with the popular kids.
You don't have Fs? Bro.
No, but I didn't understand how to talk to girls either. And so like when I had a attraction towards somebody, I was just like, it's love.
Yeah.
So it was like, I love you.
Is that her name? Don't name her. Will, bleep it out. Bleep it out.
And so like
this is just to paint a picture of just how awkward I was as well. I didn't have a crush on any cheerleader. I couldn't even tell you who was a cheerleader at the time. I don't even know.
I can name off 3 of them.
Oh, well, good for you. Congratulations.
No, 4.
I remember one time, this is how awkward I was, and this is a story that I'm not happy to tell because it haunts me to this day. I was walking down the hallway, and these 2 girls in their cheerleading outfit were in front of me, and I wasn't looking at them. I was looking down at the floor because that's how I walked. I walked with looking down the floor. Mm-hmm. But I caught it in the corner of my eye. They looked back and looked at me and saw me looking down at the ground, and then they were like, then she whispered to her friend like, and I thought in my head they're thinking, oh God, they thought I was looking at their ass. I wasn't. So I said out loud, oh no, I wasn't looking at your ass. Literally out loud. They didn't say that. And to this day,
that is so embarrassing. I'm sorry.
It still embarrasses me to this day of that one moment because it's like I wasn't looking at their ass, but I just had to say it. And it was in the middle of the hallway. Everyone's by, and I'm like, oh no, I wasn't looking at your ass. It's like, oh God.
The worst thing is I know what you're talking about.
Were you there?
I think if I remember right,
God.
It was walking because our lockers weren't far from each other. I remember in junior high, our lockers weren't far from each other. If you were walking, you know where the back entrance to the junior high is?
Yeah.
Where we usually came in from the buses and everything was that back entrance as opposed to the front where parents dropped off and you went in and it was right by the principal's office. Yeah, yeah. It was that hallway heading down towards like the art classes and the I think I recall.
Oh no!
I just recall, I don't recall the incident. I just remember hearing somebody say those words.
God, no! Don't tell me it echoed down the hallway.
No, because my lockers were like about halfway down that hallway. So because I had Mrs. Patrika for home period.
You remember too many details about this. I don't need this in my life, man. Get back to the episode. I don't need this right now.
No, but the reason I bring this up is because I am so socially aware now, like when I'm walking around in public, and I'm generally a larger guy at 6'1". And I don't, like when I had my hair long and it was all disheveled and stuff because I was just walking to get something done, I was behind these two women and I was like, because I walk fast. I'm trying to get from point A to point B. And they were doing mannerisms that made me think they were uncomfortable.
I get it.
And so it's like, I think of these things, but I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I just chose, I'm just going to walk past them so then they're not uncomfortable with me being behind them.
Okay.
So, but I
We
think
are
that's like,
so off topic.
I know.
Let's get back. Okay. Cheerleading. What are we talking about?
we were talking about the difference between high school cheerleading and competitive
All right,
cheerleading
all
with
right.
regard to the routines that are done on mats and how the competition works. And usually what happens in competitive cheerleading is as they do all of these things, they are then rated by judges.
Okay.
And are given scores.
Okay.
And everybody has different routines and different things that they do. And it's all compared based on like skill, overall performance and choreography, like difficulty of the tricks, coordination, or like so that whether they were both doing the same thing at the same time like they were supposed to. And so they have a panel of judges that then score them, and then teams win based on those scores.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's probably other like smaller group competitions and large group competitions and different things within competitive cheerleading where it's like, you know, if you have this many people or they're this age group, it's sectioned down in that way. So the only one that I can picture is more of the larger group when they're doing a lot of the stacks and throws and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. So how does one get into cheerleading? Where does it start?
I honestly think it starts in two places. I would estimate, because these are the two places that my neighbor started in, which is gymnastics and dance.
Okay.
Those two probably combine into becoming cheerleaders. Mostly gymnastics, but dance also goes into there.
Were there cheerleaders at youth events?
Yeah, there's like youth cheerleading. There's a whole like reality show that existed about youth cheerleading, and
There's a reality show for everything.
yeah. I think it's called Cheer Moms.
Great. Great. I'm so glad for that. Ugh. Anyway, I have many interjections that I could make, but we actually got to like talk about cheerleading. Okay, so it starts from either gymnastics or dance, and that's just starting from like hobby. You take your kid to some dance studio or some gymnastics gym.
Yeah.
And then when it gets to the school level and you start to socialize in a school setting, then with sports in schools and stuff like that, then cheerleading naturally becomes a part of it. And then the school takes over from there.
Yeah, and I think that's why high school cheerleading came about to exist. I think the origin still was in the fact of like probably before women were allowed in sports at the same level as men. And that's where cheerleading originally began, because it gave them something to do and it wasn't gymnastics based. And it grew from there. But this is just a complete guess, and I could be completely wrong. And so going into Act 3, we talked about where cheerleading comes from in the sense of like dance and gymnastics. But what's interesting to me is the distinct differences that exist between high school cheerleading and competitive cheerleading. Because to me, competitive cheerleading is so choreography and gymnastics based. It's basically team floor exercise where everybody's doing it all at once. Whereas high school, it's like, yeah, some of them can do the tricks, not all of them could. And they're mostly, appealing to the crowd and being entertainment. And getting into professional cheerleading, it's literally eye candy. It's literally marketing. It's usually using sexualization for marketing. Although they're trying to identify it as not being that, it still very obviously is that.
Yeah.
Especially in the NFL and American football and stuff like that, in the way that they're portrayed.
Yeah. I've always said that halftime shows could be a magician.
Oh, yeah.
Legitimately, if you put a magician out there, or like you'd actually do like Cirque du Soleil out, why has there not been a Super Bowl halftime that is a Cirque du Soleil show? People would love it. There's always this thing like about having a big musician perform at the Super Bowl. It's a big show. It's like, but if you just did like the Las Vegas Cirque du Soleil shows or the traveling one, people would be like, wow, oh yeah, flips. It's cool.
Yeah, honestly, if they combined like competitive cheerleading with like Cirque du Soleil-esque performances where there's a lot more like hanging and you're doing like what are some of them that they do? They do the
Zoomanity where they get naked.
No, I'm talking about the like
that's
silks.
one of them. You can't tell me it's not one of them.
It is one of them, but the like they do
aerial silks.
Yes, and then they do other different aerial things. Trapeze
even
exists.
pole dancing is technically one of those performative, intensely physical exercises. Like it's crazy the kind of upper body strength and just like leg strength that you need to be able to do any of those things, aerial silks, all that stuff. And I think in a weird way, what it amounts to is and this is like the status of the environment and not so much what it is, but I'm just saying this for it is. It's looked down upon. Mm-hmm. And it's marginalized as not a real thing. It's stigmatized. Like these expressions and these beautiful movements and Cirque du Soleil and all these different things for any gender at all, like it doesn't matter. Like it's predominantly women, but they're marginalized to be like, oh, pole dancing, it's stripping. Oh, this, if anything is performative and beautiful, it's sexualized instantly because people want to use it for marketing purposes. And if the people that are performing these things are not able to be marketed or don't allow themselves to be, they're shoved aside and they're like, oh, that's not useful to me, so it's not a real thing, so you go over there to the side. And it's like it's not treated with the same level of respect for the physicality and the amount of incredible feats of strength and agility that these people are doing.
And I completely agree with that, because this is why I don't think competitive cheerleading should be called cheerleading, because the name cheerleading has such a negative stigma to it, to what we understand as high school cheerleading. Or the cheerleading you see in the NFL. Like, I understand they're dancers mostly in the NFL, but the athleticism to do these stunts and spins and tricks that they do, and the danger that exists with them being tossed in the air. Like, we didn't even get into the like scariness of being tossed in the air and how one little bit off could lead to a broken leg.
Broken neck.
Yeah.
But I will say about you, like, not wanting to call it cheerleading, do you even think that is also you kind of like internalizing some kind of stigma about it, where cheerleaders and competitive cheerleaders might be like, we want to take that term back and we want to own that term. That's our term. And like, that's what we want to be known as. I don't know. We don't have a cheerleader here, so it could be either way. But I totally get what you're saying. But at the same time, there might be actual cheerleaders out there that are like, I want this for me, and I want it to be cheerleading because that's what I know it as, and that's what I identify it as.
Right. The reason I think it should be changed in name has more to do with the fact that I want them to be able to be championed. And it's the fact that I know plenty of people in the sporting world that the word cheerleading, that everybody is not a sport, not a sport, not a sport.
Okay.
And to some degree, with regard to the high school stuff and the way that they actually lead cheers and focus on that, I don't consider that a sport. But when it comes to competitive cheer, I absolutely think that's a sport. And I want them to get that respect that they deserve for the skills that they do.
Was that part of your core definition of sport? Like, it has to have some kind of competitive like event to it?
Yes.
Competition-based things.
Yeah, which is why like high school cheerleading, they generally don't compete. More often than not, they don't. We had a dance team also at Milford, and they competed, but the cheerleading team never competed.
It's an interesting gray area, I think, and I'm obviously not qualified to define anything. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I would think of like in a similar way, let's say, for example, and this could be many things, but a contortionist was on stage. Incredible physical feats. Incredible. Is it a sport?
That's a topic for when we get into non-competitive sports. Because
interesting.
There's an interesting thought process that we're going to have, and I'm going to bring up when we talk about that.
Okay.
But that's honestly why I want cheerleading removed from that tag, because I want them to get the respect that they deserve.
Okay.
And I think the fastest and the best way to do that is to change the name away from cheerleading. That's not to say like in competitive cheer, I think they do actual cheers, and that's part of the competition. I think the main part of the competition that I focus on is the most interesting and the most intricate, and there's probably like multiple stages or different judging avenues. And sports that require judges is a difficult topic.
Yeah.
But I want them to get the respect they deserve. I mean, it's like you described, it's like Cirque du Soleil to a smaller scale. And like, I didn't even think about how when you brought that up, like these people very well could become the Cirque du Soleil performers of the future. Like you get into dancers that do it. You get into the competitive cheerleading that does it.
Yeah.
Gymnastics, all of those things. It's truly incredible. what they're able to do.
Is Cirque du Soleil a sport?
I think it's performance and it's a show. I wouldn't call it a sport but we won't get into that.
Which is an interesting thing because in high school cheerleading, it is a performance and a show. It's not part of the competition that is taking place directly adjacent to it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like it's the same category, but there's no disrespect in saying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these qualifiers of like, is something a sport, is something not a sport. It's all tied under the umbrella of human nature and like the amazing things the human body can do, and that's wonderful. But you know, it's kind of like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares kind of situation. Does it really matter because of like just some things have to be lumped in category A and some things have to be lumped
I
in
think it
category B?
matters for funding purposes in high school what is designated as a sport, because the athletic department versus clubs and how people have to get into it. That's where
I see.
the sport designation becomes important.
Given that we are and will be the #1 sports podcast in America, what we say here today matters and will echo for eternity in the funding and the upbringing of future cheerleaders across the world. So think carefully, Tyler, before you speak your next words.
Here's my answer then. I think competitive cheerleading should come to schools. It shouldn't be cheerleading as it exists now in the way that cheerleading like usually work at high schools. I think competitive cheer being integrated into school would be really cool to see. And just think about the performance and what they could do if they had protective mats on the field and how much more respect they could gain and still remain the name as cheerleading.
I think that would be so cool because if I was back in high school again and I knew that there was a flippy backflip club, like a fun throw in the air club,
do it.
I would do it.
Yeah.
I would do it. I never even knew that cheerleading was an option for me as a guy in school or college until I got to college. And I realized that, oh, there's men's children. That would have been fun. Throwing people around, doing flips and shit, yelling. I love yelling. I'm real good at yelling. And it's like, these are things like, I totally get what you're saying about like the name cheerleading, because as a school kid and as like a dumb teenager, I didn't know any better because that's all I knew. Cheerleading. Right. It's in pop culture of like cheerleading, you know, it's a dumb cheerleader. Like that is the stereotype.
Correct.
Like just like, you know, it's really that stereotype has been hammered in popular culture, really does that. And then the social like dynamics of it kind of reinforces that. But if there was a club that, if you called it like the Cirque du Soleil Club, I would love to be a part of it. I mean, would so love to do it.
Yeah. In high school, I would have loved to have learned how to do back handsprings and do all of those things. Like I hated gymnastics when I was really little because they kept forcing me to do the splits and it was not fun and it was painful because I'm very inflexible. But
and that's the other side of it that we didn't even touch on is like, besides the stigmatizing for, let's say, just like girls in high school, what about the guys? Like I learned to do a back handspring. Do you think that made me popular?
No,
because it was girly.
Yeah.
That's what it was called. I'm not saying like that's what it should have been called. That's what it was known as. Like I didn't want to show it off too much because some people thought it was stupid that I could do a back handspring.
And that's why we didn't have male cheerleaders at our school, is because it was like, no, that's for girls.
And they didn't want to get made fun of.
Yeah. I mean, then there's the difficulty of dealing with co-ed too, and you know, how they would handle that. Because at our school, like I'm sure there are schools out there that are a lot better with their cheerleading and stuff like that. Yeah. But from our root experience, like it was, if you're in cheerleading as a dude, it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure it would feel absolutely weird for the girls that were a part of that, as well as the coach, as well as like, and then other people just being like, hey, look at you, you're a cheerleader. And it's like, dude, like, no.
All right. So now that we're reaching towards the end of this episode and we have a better understanding of what cheerleading is, do you want to readdress or reconsider, I'm not saying you should or have to, the question that led to this was, if you could ban a sport from existence and end it forever, would it still be cheerleading?
I don't think that it would, as long as it would evolve in the way that we're talking about.
All right.
Because I think that if they brought the competitive cheer more into school and people understood it better.
Oh, yeah. I would go to a school versus school competition if it was like all these amazing tricks and stuff, which I'm sure there were. I think there were. No,
there were not.
There were
not.
High school. No,
because our high school, like I think maybe half the team could do like the back handspring stuff. Not everybody on the cheerleading team could.
Yeah, but
yeah, that would be really cool to see.
That would be cool to see. And I think like in today's day and age, the beautiful thing is like whatever you want to do, you can do it. Like it's supposed to be. It's not there yet, but it's supposed to be more inclusive. It's supposed to be like be who you want want to be. Try the things that you want to do without any judgment. I mean, that's the problem in when you're dealing with other people. There's always judgments going around, and there's always like social hierarchies and whatnot and cliques and whatever. But in all honesty, the things that I've tried since I have left school have really allowed me to find who I am as a person. And if there's more opportunities for people to do that when they're in school, the better.
Yeah. And I honestly think, and this is the biggest thing that I take away from this and something I talk about all the time, is like, be unapologetically you. Like, to the extent where it's not affecting other people. Like, don't be like, I'm a murderer and stab people. But like, be unapologetically you in the sense that if you are interested in something, go for it.
All the murderers just are pulling down their shirts. You know, they have their big chest tattoos. They're like, I did it! With blood dripping down. They're like, okay, not today, guys. All right, fine.
No, but like, if there's something you're interested in and you want to check it out and other people are being like, oh, you'll be made fun of, oh, do that. The hardest thing is getting through that. And it's very difficult to do. But if you want to try something, and that's why I loved college more than anything, was that you were able to do that and people weren't, scrutinizing you because everybody was trying new things.
Yeah.
I wish and I hope that at some point we can remove this judgmental nature that kids have on each other and get to a point where it's like, go for the thing that you want to do. If you want to be a cheerleader, go for it. If you want to try swimming or a sport that otherwise like people don't think you have the body type for or something like that, give it a try.
Yeah.
The reason I gravitated the sports that I did in high school was because of the people that were there and because I had fun doing it. And that's the majority of people in general, is when you find something you're passionate about and you're able to share that with somebody, that's where you find your greatest friendships and you find the greatest bonds you'll have in life.
Yeah. Confidence and social acceptance does not come from how other people perceive you. If you value your self-worth just on how other people like are observing you and judging you, then you don't actually have like a foundation of you underneath it. When I was in high school, I had no foundation. I was like entirely based on like what everyone thought of me. It doesn't matter. Now in my adult life, I'm proud to say that I am incredibly happy with who I am as a person and like in what I do. There was a good moment just last night when we were biking down the hill, and it's probably a lot of people's nightmares on a bike is just like getting yelled at from a car, right? A car goes by. Hey, he says, this lady leans out the window like, learn to drive, you fucking idiots. And I go, okay, thank you. And then I literally hear her go, so I said back, this is a true story. It just happened last night. Tyler can vouch.
Yeah.
And then she said, like, keep talking, I'll stop the car and beat your ass. And I said, okay, sounds good. And then they just kept driving down the hill. And that's less an example of like in high school, where is that applicable? But it's like, if you are confident in what you're doing, and we were riding perfectly safe on our bicycles.
And perfectly legal.
And perfectly
legal. We were
legal.
in single file, staying to the right side so people could pass
so they could pass. It's like people have judgments of everything, everywhere, all the time, at every moment. The best thing it can do for you is try things that make you happy, because that makes you happy with yourself. And when you get happy with yourself, you get more confident in who you are as a person. And then what other people say about you who don't know you doesn't matter as much. It's easy to say, hard to show. I'm a living example of it. Tyler's a living example of it. It is one of those things where looking inward and finding these cool things, and sport is an incredible way to find these things. That's what I've been learning over the past few months. It's just like sports gives you an opportunity to look in. You can't look in without an instigating event, a choice to be made, a moment that requires is like make or break. Those are the moments that really transform you as who you are. And none give you more moments, I think, than sports on a consistent basis, unless you go into the hospital for various surgeries. Then you get a lot of make or break moments to look inward on yourself.
Are you looking at me thinking of all this?
I'm looking at you, I'm looking at me, looking at all this. Like, it's like there are many other things in life besides sports, of course, that get you to who you should be as a person. But the only thing you should be as a person is you. And you're only going to find that, and then you're only going to have you. So you are who you should be, period.
Yeah, and you decide the person that you want to be and can work towards that at any moment and at any time.
Mm-hmm. The only thing we will judge you for is if you do not subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and tell the world about the #1 sports podcast in America, and soon the world.
Don't forget to listen elegantly, because not only are we the #1, we're the #1 most elegant sports podcast.
You've heard it here first. This is Go! My favorite sports team. Tyler, thank you so much for this enlightening discussion on cheerleading.
Yeah, I did not expect to get into this today, so it was like, all right, well, they brought the topic up, so let's get into it. And
I would also like, on the GMFST subreddit, if you guys can post stories, if you were a cheerleader, if you still are a cheerleader, I want to hear what it's like from the inside perspective of what this is, the actual stigmas that you face, and the judgments that you face for being a cheerleader, either not being taken seriously, or like not happy with what you did, or happy with what you did, or had incredible success in what you were doing, or wish you had more. We want to hear all the stories from you on our subreddit and soon our Discord.
Yeah, honestly, share those stories, especially whether it's high school cheer, competitive cheer, all of those. I want to learn more about this because I've seen it on the outside looking in and experienced it in our own way as guys at Milford High School, but I'm very interested in exactly what those stories hold, whether it involves coaches or good coaches, bad coaches, the inner workings of cheerleaders within themselves, like... It's really interesting to think about, especially since throughout this entire conversation, my mind was changed on the topic of obliterating cheerleading from being a sport in the world.
It was that close. All you cheerleaders, you can still worship your pom-pom gods. You sacrifice your cheering goats in your basements. You carry on, you beautiful creatures, you.
Yeah, and I hope you seek out opportunities with Cirque du Soleil, because I never would have thought of that if not for you, Mark.
I'm sure they do. We're not saying all cheerleaders should go to the circus, of course. Like, that's what we're saying. But hey, those talents are valuable. You should use them. Hey, go signing off. Goodbye.